the ani, there's a little chaf placed there. And so the Ishbitzer writes, the chaf as a prefix, wherever you see the chaf in any word, it makes a similitude. It's like this, right? Ke is sort of like this, right? Ke dimyon, he says dimyon. Why would God use a letter that means like this? Not exactly, but sort of, in God's own self-identification, in the Ten Commandments. The Ishbitzer says, radically and unbelievably, because had God said ani, it would have been too much. If God said ani and self-identified with this absolute sense of who God was, there would be no room for human beings to wonder about the Ten Commandments or about any other religious law. And God's own uncertainty inserted into God's own self-identification leaves room for the entire corpus, says the Ishbitzer, of what becomes oral Torah. That within the certainty of the text, of the Torah itself, which we people have killed over and murdered over and been murdered over, there's a hint at maybe sort of a reaching for, but not in actually getting there, and in kind of a never-ending search for the ani that the anochi points towards. Isn't that nice? And I think that my own teacher, when he would talk about what we just sang, at the end, right when we took the Torah away, we say Hashivenu Adonai Elecha, right? Right? Eitz Chaim Hi, right? 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 God, bring us back, Elecha, to you, V'nashuva, and we'll come back. Chadesh Yamenu, what's the next last word? Kedem. Renew our days, sort of like they were before. You could hear it as restoration, right? Reb Zalman used to talk about restoration. When you think romantically about religious, what came before, you can imagine everything before was so perfect. Oh, it was all so great, way back when before. But the kedem doesn't mean exactly as it was. It leaves room for us, as we try to regain and recapture something of what maybe was lost, to remember that it wasn't perfect. It needed its own evolution. It needs its own upgrade, its own system, its own ke. So I think that, between Yisro last night, Yitro, who came to Moshe and said, before you receive the Ten Commandments, let me give you some advice. It's not going to come from the mountain, it's going to come from your father-in-law. Can you hear it? And Moshe says, yeah, I hear it. You're right. I'm a prophet. God talked to me, but I didn't figure this one out. This delegation business. And then God's self says, I am, but you'll never grasp me. Keep looking. But don't make me into some fixed thing. You'll miss the point, and don't make the past into some fixed thing. That was my filler. And I'm going to stay here. Okay, Rabbi Kolas is creative enough to, as usual, to make anything.
So I couldn't decide what to teach today, either Yitro or something else, and I was going to do something else, but you just inspired me to do Yitro. So, and I'd love to have a conversation with you and the community about this. So do you ever feel, and I missed the beginning of what you said, so if I repeat anything, you'll tell me. Do you ever feel like you need to do it all because if you don't do it, it's not going to get done well? Raise your hand if you feel like that. So Moshe was doing everything, right? He felt like he had to do everything, and if he didn't do it all, it would fall apart. And Yitro is the one who came to tell him, you don't have to hold it all, right? You can actually let the people help you with this system and then focus your energies. So I read something recently in Parker Palmer's book about leadership. I just read one of his essays. It was an assignment and I did my homework. And Parker Palmer is a great spiritual leader, an educator, an educational thinker. And he said something about both Marxism and capitalism, that material form precedes consciousness, but that in spirituality, consciousness precedes material form. And if you open up the book of Genesis, you have it right there, right? God speaks and the world comes into being. God precedes the world, right? And the world comes into being. So I was thinking about like, where does our faith really show? And I think it really shows not in our declarations of faith, and not even if we believe in God or not, but in how we live our daily lives. So if I feel like I have to do everything or it's not going to get done, then there's a kind of lack of faith in there. There's a lack of faith in sort of having a partner, right? Do I have a partner? Or can I, in 12-step language, let go and let God? Right? And that actually relates to Anochi, because the Ki gives you a little space. And perhaps that little space, I'm just sort of tying your two, the little space gives you the ability maybe to give a little space to your human constructs and not completely believe in them because you're believing in something beyond yourself. So you're able to open up your fist and maybe connect to the world because you have faith that you can. So my issue, no, I'm not.
Just opening your fist.
Yeah, opening, yeah. It gives space. Gives space. That's the chaf. Ooh. Because this letter is what? Maybe it's more like a nun, a no. Yeah, I don't know, but a chaf, that's beautiful.
The chaf means palm of your hand. Chaf it's shaped like that. It's open. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So my lack of faith often comes at home. I feel like I have to do everything, otherwise it's not going to be good enough, right? And that's what you feel, Daniel? Okay, thank you. I know I'm not alone. And that's where my source of, right, Andrew, did you know he felt that way? No, okay. That's your job. What, to do everything? Wait, he just said that. There's a lack of communication here. What's going on? You need a chaf. You need an oat, right? So I often feel that if I don't do everything for my family, it's not going to get done. But sometimes I think I'm more attached to that notion, and that keeps me away from the reality. And as Rabbi David was saying, Moshe was open enough to the fact that there might be a reality beyond his notion. Imagine that, right? There might be a reality beyond the way we think about the world. And that, again, necessitates that your understanding of the world is only a kit. It's only I think I get the world, but there's actually really a world beyond me that I have no idea, because it's so immense and so awesome, and I can't really grasp it. And here I am living in my small, close-fisted notions of who you are, or who you are, or who you are, and that you're not going to be fully capable of partnering with me to hold up God's world. So I wanted to turn that to you and see if you have any thoughts. And then open it up if we have a few minutes.
First of all, I just want to say how beautifully you wove that, your teaching.
Yeah, and I prepared a whole other thing.
I know, that's just yet another, how many amazing rabbis are here this morning? I mean, between Yosef and his brachot and your nimble mind, it's really remarkable. I think that, I loved what you said.
You totally inspired me.
I just loved what you said. I just think it's beautiful. And I think that in imagining God as so often the conversation between mysticism and God's unity and oneness and more dualistic, let's say, religions, where people sometimes struggle with a God out there, as it were, as opposed to a God in here, is fundamentally, what Buber and others were talking about, is that there's a model in which God acts as a template for partnership in our tradition, where God says, I leave the creation of the world unfinished so that you can finish it with me. And that in some way can feel like a frustration for the mystics who think everything is one already and so on, and God over there and I'm over here. It feels very, juvenile. There's such a remarkable way that you framed this as a partnership and as a beautiful modeling of making room for, and not, because of course God's infinity would in some way would say there's no room for human agency and human beings. But in Judaism and in other traditions, it's vital for human beings to feel as though there's something for them to do that is left unfinished, that only they can do. And that was one thought I had. And the second thought I had was, after you framed this so beautifully as about doubt as being a very holy kind of invitation to not have to do it all. I was thinking about this moment in our culture wars where sometimes healthy, holy doubt can be hijacked and weaponized to become doubtful of things of which we should never be doubtful, and how it's almost like at the kernel of this truth conversation about the way fascism plays fascistic leanings. They play fast and furious, especially with people who do value doubt, and think, oh, should I be?
It's like the snake walking into the breach.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly, and how I often have thought about holy safek versus unholy doubt, and how to make that distinction is very complicated. But yeah, I loved that. What you said is really beautiful. Wow. Yeah.
So let's open it up and.
Sit down.
You gonna sit down? Let's open. Let me just do a time check. How much time do I have now?
Hours.
Great, Sloan. If you don't mind standing up, and Jeff, you're gonna run around with a mic. Great. Thanks so much. So everybody, relax. We have a lot of time, it seems.
There were two things I wanted to say. First up,
Yeah.
To Rabbi David, last night I really appreciated your drash because I've long had a high appreciation of Yitro for this exact reason, and felt like I could sort of come out in my affection. And what I wanted to add to what you both mentioned was that there's in delegation or in working with other people, and since I've really studied this over the last few years, I've sort of come to the conclusion that you see, or we talk about seeing the divinity in one another and seeing God in one another, and it's when you carry that and you're holding that burden, but when you start working with someone, you're almost working with God, and I think that there is something to that, and that complicated relationship one has, and being able to see and wrestle as God does with us as a Jewish people, with God through others. So I just wanted to that.
Beautiful, thank you. It's interesting because when we're working with another person, we're working with God, as Sloan's saying, but sometimes when we're working with another person, all we are is annoyed, right? So that's like it's like heaven and hell, as Sartre would say, right? Hell is other people. But what I just learned at this mostly silent retreat I was at, there are Hasidic texts that when you're annoyed by someone else, it's actually an invitation to look within and see, how is the other person who's annoying you a mirror of perhaps the worst aspects of yourself that you haven't really acknowledged. So it turns your annoyance into a spiritual practice. Think of that. So if you're annoyed by your kid or your partner or your friend or your coworker, it's like, oh, thank you. And now I'm going to go to therapy. No, go ahead. Okay, any other comments about anything that either Rabbi David or I said? Elliot.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi Diane and Rabbi David, for your wisdom and words. I was thinking about, I forget which one of you said it, but
doesn't matter actually.
About learning, I guess related to Yitro, like acknowledging that we can learn, from others that are outside, of our sort of immediate sphere. And I'll speak personally for a second. I took part in one of the learning circles that Rabbi Diane led, and it was really interesting because there were so many different perspectives, so many different points of view, and
so just to tell people what you're talking about, we've been having listening circles where people are talking about their feelings about what's happening in Israel and Gaza.
Yeah, Israel, Gaza, Israel, Palestine, and I guess my wish, is that that I and all of us can stay open and to hearing other voices that we might not, normally hear, and to see what we can learn from one another.
Thank you, Elliot. And we just had a listening circle for the seeker parents, which was really amazing. And Jeffrey was there too. Andrea, take the mic, please.
I have a question. Rabbi David, you wove in fascism to this, and it just flew by. And could you, is it coming back?
Yeah, I just meant, like, if you look at the work of Timothy Snyder, you know, I was just in passing around how people use in an enlightened society, and those who are, those who wish to be humble about what we can and can't know, how that can become weaponized and is weaponized by those who then use propaganda and its proliferation, and let's say the dissolution of truth, right? The raising questions about what we can and can't know is used, right, by fascists to tell us that more people were at an inauguration than our eyes actually saw, and how can you trust what is before you, and so on. And that tendency, of course, is not only of overtly fascistic tendencies, but of course, like in all power structures, as Foucault and others have argued, use truth and the mediums of telling people about the truth as a way to control. And so once you begin to think that you don't know what you know, right, then they can play fast and easy with weaving a reality that is very far from the truth. So that's what I meant to say, that that's obviously up for all of us with, with social media and images that can be, just the last week, I think somebody sent me like a test on my phone about which is the true image. Anybody get this? Yeah. Which is the true image, or which is the AI generated image of somebody? And I got 7 out of 10 wrong.
Wow.
7 out of 10 guesses were wrong. I couldn't tell the difference between an AI generated image.
That's scary.
And that is intensely scary. And that's up.
Scary.
The question of truth and doubt, uncertainty and assuredness, I think are up. And I think there's a holy uncertainty that Rabbi Diane is speaking to. And then there's how it can become weaponized. And I'm not saying we should talk about it now, but I think it's an important thing to raise.
So I want to add to that it feels to me right now that any vulnerability is unsafe, like including the vulnerability of doubt or just saying your doubts. Yeah. Theo?
So I don't know if this is okay, so maybe Dan, you could tell me if this is okay. I wanted to, related to what you said, I wanted to ask a question about another piece of the Parsha. Would that be okay?
Maybe.
Okay, so I'll ask the question and you can tell me if it's a bad thing.
I'll tell you if
Okay.
it feels connected.
So when Moses goes up to get the Torah,
Yeah.
it says he goes into the cloud, which
Yeah.
is burning
Gash
and all this
Arafel.
stuff. And
Yeah.
what's in the cloud? Darkness.
Yeah.
Opaque darkness.
Yeah.
And in that place, he hears God's voice.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
do you think, relative
Beautiful.
to what you're saying, like that's part of it, like kind of having faith even in the darkness kind of thing?
I think that's such a beautiful question, especially because I taught a text about that this morning. So it's a beautiful question because I'm prepared to answer it. So Nachman of Breslov says the people kept their distance, right? The people, Vayamod ha'am rachok, right? They were terrified after they heard the 10 Commandments, or what we refer to as the 10 Commandments, and they stood at a distance. And Moshe did the opposite. Moshe approached the dark cloud, the Arafel. So what Rabbi Nachman says, in short, is that what the dark cloud is approaching the obstacle. So the people kept a distance from the obstacle, and Moshe was able to approach it. And it says, Moshe entered the mist where God was, in other words, into the obstacle. So when we enter the obstacle and enter the dark cloud, that is actually what Rabbi Nachman is saying, is where we find God. Could you imagine like relating to life that way, that when we have obstacles or challenges, we actually go into them instead of go away from them? And I know my natural tendency is like, oh, maybe I can avoid this until it goes away, and it doesn't seem to work. So I think this is a very good alternative. And I think the way that connects to what Rabbi David was saying about Yitro is that Yitro went right into the obstacle, And somehow that freed Moshe up, right, to be a vehicle, a vessel for revelation. Isn't that amazing? Thank you. You set me up well. Okay, Sharon, Anna, and then I think it's basically a wrap.
No, I just wanted to add to that, in creative endeavors, or I can just speak about writing, both for myself and for my students, whenever you hit a place where you feel you can't enter, or something you cannot write about, that's precisely where you have to go.
Ooh,
and you may
nice.
even begin with saying, I can't write about this. I can't write about my mother's death, and yet that is the fertile area that I must write about. So that's, very important in creativity.
Beautiful. And maybe you just need to write, I can't write about this, I can't write about this, until you can write about it. Beautiful, thank you. It was Anna.
So I'm thinking about how scary it is, our inability to tell the difference between an AI-generated image and a digital image of an actual person. And I'm wondering if maybe it says less about how great AI is and more about how impoverished digital images of people are. And maybe that impoverishment, that two-dimensionality of it is because it's missing the chaf. It's missing the spaciousness of possibilities that a real live human standing in front of you has, and you would never mistake a real live person.
Beautiful. Thank you, Anna. So I want to conclude by blessing us all with a sense of the truth of our own experience, the courage to share that with others, and the courage to trust what's outside of ourselves when it's appropriate, right? It takes a lot of discernment and kind of let go and partner with reality and the images of God who stand before us. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
אין עוד מלבדו, והשבות אל לבביך.
והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים. 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 אין עוד מלבדו, אין עוד אפס זולתו, אין עוד מלבדו, אין עוד אפס זולתו. אחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד אחד אדוני אחד ושמו אין עוד, אין עוד, אין
be seated. If you're a mourner who's in mourning or observing a yurtzeit, you're invited to stand and share the name of the person that you're reciting Kaddish for.
I have your type for my beloved Tanta Malka Bat Rashka Moshe.
Mourner's Kaddish. Page 59. If it's in your custom to stand in support of the mourners, you're invited to do so. Yikadal v'ikadash shmei Rava, v'yamad v'yivrach chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yamechon, v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'gala u'b'zman kari v'yamru Amen. V'hei shmei Rabba mevarach v'olam v'yamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha v'rechu ve'ela min kol berchata v'shivata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yamru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru Amen. Oseh shalom v'mamal הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Amen. You may be seated. Jeffrey, will you be doing announcements?
Hi, everybody.
It's there. It's there behind.
That's okay.
It's from Friday night, but it's the same.
So 2 weeks from this Shabbos, please join us if you have not yet heard. Rabbi Jessica Kate Meyer, former Romemu rabbi, will be coming back for a full weekend Shabbaton. Please register. Friday night there's going to be a dinner, and Saturday afternoon a Havdalah meal and a Nigun jam, a chance to sing. Both require registration, and both are filling up, I can tell you, because I see the registration forms. It will also be honor. We will be honoring all of our volunteers that weekend, so come and support our volunteers, people that help out at Romemu in so many different ways. If you are not aware, there's an amazing semester of adult learning classes that's happening, and if you are at all interested in what's happening now in our world after October 7th, join on Thursday nights. I took the class this last Thursday. Romemu member David Kaufman is doing a fascinating class on anti-Semitism, on Zionism and anti-Zionism. It's never too late. And tonight there's actually an event that Romemu is co-sponsoring at B'nai Jeshurun. It will be a Havdalah commemoration of our immigrant Shabbat in conjunction with Chayas. So please join us at B'nai Jeshurun tonight at 6:30. Yeah, it's at the Church of St. Andrew and St. Paul
86
on West 86th Street. Anybody else want to suggest where it is?
Manhattan.
No, that all makes sense. That all makes sense. Food pantry, look on our website to help out at the food pantry. Lauren can tell you a lot about that. It's an incredible thing. Tomorrow. So come join us tomorrow, please. And last but definitely not least, please consider joining Rabbi David Ingber and myself in Israel for a week, March 12th through 17th. We'll be going to bear witness, to lend support to our brethren, our brothers and sisters in Israel, learn a lot. And if you haven't been in Israel in a while, or even if you've been, it's an important time to go, no matter what your political view doesn't really matter. It's important to be there, and please join us. Information coming shortly. Shabbat Shalom.
Please rise for Kiddush on page 63.
I'd also like to thank Greg on sound, and Shoshana, percussion, and Jennifer, thank you so much. And Rabbi Yosef Goldman, thank you very much. And Lauren Jacobs for adult learning today. And Aya for Gabaya, thank you so much.
Aya for Gabaya.
And all the family, all the Seekers' parents for coming today, and family Shabbat, and Rabbi Diane, Rabbi David for laning.
Noah.
And Noah for youth and family, for all running Seekers today, and all
For
our
Eden
teachers.
Foster for keeping it all together. And who on Zoom?
Michaela.
Michaela.
Thanks,
Okay.
Michaela. Carol.
And Caroline for open book.
Me?
Michelle, thank you, Michelle. So great to have you here. Visiting from California.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת ללאותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו, סברי חבריי וחברותיי, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא ברי הגפן. Finish our service with Adon Olam on page 62. Let's try this out. Adon Olam Hashem Balach B'terem kol Yetzir nivra לעת נער בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה אדון עולם שלח בטרם כל אדון עולם נשא בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.